This is the first video in a 6-part series called Silencing the Noise, Hearing God in a Distracted World. If you've ever felt like your life is spiritually blurry, like God is far, your mind is full, and your soul is starving, this series is for you. We live in a world louder than ever. Constant buzzing, endless scrolling, tasks piling on tasks. But this series is not about surface-level fixes. It's about getting your focus back, not just for productivity, but to truly walk with God in a world that's designed to pull you away from Him. This video number 1 in the series will expose the subtle distractions the enemy uses daily. Distractions that don't look evil, but are effective. Because Satan's most dangerous tactic isn't destruction, it's distraction.
Let's start with something most people miss. The devil doesn't always tempt you with evil. Sometimes he just keeps you busy. 1 Peter 5:8 says he prowls around like a roaring lion, but in your life, he might not be roaring. He might just be flooding your schedule. Think about it. When was the last time you had a full day to just be still with God? Not a rushed devotional or a multitasking prayer, but real silence. The truth is, your attention is a battlefield. And if the enemy can take your attention, he doesn't need to take your faith. Because once you're distracted, you stop hearing God clearly. And once you stop hearing Him, your spiritual life slowly dries out without you even noticing. One of the enemy's sharpest tools today is social media. Not because it's evil, but because it's engineered to capture, hold, and slowly reshape your attention. Apps are designed to release dopamine, to addict, to numb. What starts as 5 minutes turns into 45. You don't even remember what you consumed. And worse, you feel mentally cluttered, emotionally tired, and spiritually far from God. Romans 12:2 warns, "Do not be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." But how can your mind be renewed if you never let it rest? Another distraction that seems holy but isn't is busyness. We're constantly moving, working, helping others, even doing church things, but rarely just sitting at Jesus' feet. In Luke 10:38-42, Martha was doing good things serving Jesus, but she was worried and upset about many things. Meanwhile, Mary sat and listened. Jesus said Mary chose what is better. Sometimes even our service to God can become a replacement for intimacy with Him. Being busy isn't bad, but when it replaces stillness, it becomes dangerous. The enemy doesn't mind if you're active as long as you're disconnected. Here's what's scary. Spiritual distraction doesn't feel like rebellion. It feels like normal life. You don't wake up one day deciding to drift from God. It happens one scroll, one task, one excuse at a time. Proverbs 4:25-27 says, "Let your eyes look straight ahead. Fix your gaze directly before you. Do not swerve to the right or the left." But in a world built on algorithms, your gaze is constantly being pulled. And without noticing, your soul is slowly pulled into spiritual numbness. You're not angry at God. You're just tired, distracted, distant. But here's the good news. Awareness is the first step back to attention. You don't have to live distracted. You were made for communion, real, quiet, life-changing communion with God. This video wasn't just about calling out the distractions, it was about helping you finally see them. Because once you do, you can start to fight them. Not with noise, not with guilt, but with silence, stillness, and surrender. Let me ask you something. Have you ever gotten to the end of the day and realized you never once felt connected to God? Not because you rebelled, not because you stopped believing, but because you were just consumed? Meetings, notifications, little dopamine hits from comments, reels, updates. It's not sin in the traditional sense, but it's still stealing your soul. And most of us have lived that way for so long, we now call it normal. But biblically, it's not. The reason distraction is so dangerous is that it doesn't just delay your time with God, it slowly dulls your sensitivity to Him. Think about it. In 1 Kings 19, God wasn't in the earthquake, the fire, or the wind. He was in the gentle whisper. But how can you hear a whisper when your world is screaming? Distraction doesn't just make you tired, it makes you spiritually deaf. And over time, the whisper becomes fainter. Not because God stopped speaking, but because we stopped being still. If you felt numb, spiritually dry, unfocused, empty, that's not your identity. That's a symptom. It's a sign that something sacred is being smothered. The enemy's goal isn't to make you stop believing. He just wants you to stop paying attention. Because when you stop noticing God, you start drifting from Him even while still wearing the label Christian. But Jesus didn't call us to label ourselves. He called us to follow Him. And following takes attention. I need to be clear, this series is not about guilt. Guilt says, you're failing. Grace says, you've just been distracted. Come back. The goal here is not to make you feel bad for being tired or online. The goal is to wake you up not with shame, but with clarity. God's not mad at you. He's just calling you closer. And to do that, you need to know what's pulling you away. And once you name it, you can take authority over it. Here's the twist. Distraction isn't neutral. It's not just a side effect of modern life. It's often spiritual warfare in disguise. The devil doesn't need you to fall. He just needs you to drift, to scroll, to rush, to stay too busy to notice your emptiness. Because if he can keep you looking at everything but God, he's already won. But the moment you realize it, the moment you call it out, the war shifts. You go from passive to present, from numb to awake. But if you're ready to take this journey even deeper and help keep this mission going strong, here's a quick way you can do just that.
Everything I make here is for you. But if you ever want to go deeper or support this mission, check out the Disciple or Pillar memberships. Members get things like members-only polls, so you help decide what the next video will be, early access to upcoming videos, discounted merch, and other small things to thank you. But the big thing? You'll be helping this channel stay focused on building content that actually helps Christians, not chasing trends, not burning out. Because honestly, creating this kind of work consistently is hard without support. So if you want to be part of this, not just a viewer, but a builder, I'd love to have you.
Jesus lived in a loud world too. Crowds pressed in on him. Religious leaders criticized him. People demanded healing, answers, miracles. And yet he never rushed, never panicked, never let the chaos around him distort the clarity within him. Why? Because his focus was anchored, not in reaction, but in relationship. His time with the Father wasn't squeezed in, it was prioritized. And in that stillness, he moved with bold clarity, while everyone else scrambled for control. In Luke 5:15-16 it says, "But the news about him spread even more, and large crowds came to hear him and to be healed of their sicknesses." Yet Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. Did you catch that? The crowds grew louder, the demands got bigger, and Jesus withdrew. Not out of selfishness, but out of wisdom. Even the Son of God knew that without stillness, noise wins. And if Jesus had to retreat to stay in tune with the Father, what makes us think we can survive without doing the same? Here's what's crazy. Not all distractions are sinful. Sometimes they're good. Ministry, helping others, being productive, even teaching Scripture. But Jesus wasn't swayed by any opportunity that didn't align with his Father's timing. In Mark 1:37-38, when the disciples said, "Everyone is looking for you," Jesus replied, "Let us go somewhere else." Imagine that. He left demand to follow direction. He was unavailable to distraction, even the good kind, because he was fully available to his purpose. We live in a culture that celebrates hustle, multitasking, productivity, grind. But Jesus wasn't in a hurry. He moved with peace, patience, and purpose. Not once do we see him rushing to prove anything. The enemy wants you caught in a rhythm of non-stop doing, because it slowly drowns out your ability to simply be. Be still. Be known. Be with God. Psalm 46:10 doesn't say, "Work harder and know that I am God." It says, "Be still." Stillness isn't passivity. It's resistance in a world addicted to motion. Let's be honest, many of us feel spiritually dry not because we've abandoned our faith, but because we've allowed too many things to compete with it. When you give your best attention to everything else, your soul starts to forget what God's voice sounds like. And the longer you stay distracted, the harder it is to recognize His presence. This is the real cost, not just missed moments, but missed intimacy. But it's not too late, because intimacy with God isn't earned, it's invited. And the invitation is still open. You don't need to fix everything today, but you do need to decide. Will you keep letting noise lead your life? Or will you follow the one who walked in silence, strength, and surrender? The world will not hand you stillness. You must fight for it. And you fight not with violence, but with focus. Jesus modeled it. The Spirit empowers it. And you were made for it. Let's pause for a moment. You've just been reminded that the real war isn't just about sin, it's about attention. The enemy doesn't need you to reject God. He just wants you to slowly stop paying attention to Him. But here's the beautiful truth. If distraction is a strategy, then focus can be your weapon. Not a perfect, rigid routine, but a clear, intentional return to God. Start small. Wake up, and instead of grabbing your phone, grab a verse. Before you check your notifications, check your heart. Even 5 minutes of stillness in the morning can shift the whole tone of your day. Turn off a few unnecessary alerts. Mute noise that doesn't feed your spirit. Don't underestimate what God can do with even a few moments of undivided attention. If your life feels spiritually silent, it may not be because God isn't speaking. It could be that you've been tuned to other frequencies for too long. Your mind isn't a storage unit, it's a garden, and whatever you let in will grow. Let go of the constant input and start cultivating holy focus. Because clarity, peace, and direction aren't found in noise. They're found in the presence of God. Jeremiah 29:13 says, "You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart." Not all your leftover energy, not whatever's left after scrolling, all your heart. And that kind of seeking starts with choosing to remove what doesn't matter so you can return to what does. You don't need more hours in the day. You need more focus in your heart. And God is ready to meet you there. This isn't about becoming hyper-productive or spiritually impressive. It's about remembering who you belong to. You were made for more than screens, noise, and empty motion. You were made for stillness, for awareness, for union with the living God. And today can be the first quiet step back home, not in shame, but in surrender. You made it through the first step of this journey, and that matters. I pray this isn't just information, I pray it sparks change, because the distractions will keep coming. But now, you see them. And when you can see the war, you can fight it differently. Sunday, I'll be posting the next video in this series. It's called The Real Reason You Can't Hear God's Voice, and it might just be the most important one yet.